Hey, what's up guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. I wanted to post this quick video, and we're going to take things a little bit old school, because if you remember, or if you've been with me since the early days of the channel, you'll know that I used to post a lot of these lunar anomaly research videos, where I would study, thousands of moon mission photos from when we went and landed on the moon, and I would search them to try to find things that weren't natural. Things that looked artificial, things that looked built, or basically that just didn't belong there. And we have found countless artificial objects on the moon. If you've been in this research for even a short period of time, you'll know that the moon is one of the key components of this research and is one of the best examples of alien activity near Earth happening in space, and we've documented this on the channel for years now. So today, I want to show you some new findings that, to my knowledge, have never before been shown online, of what can only be described as a flying saucer sitting dead center in the middle of a crater. Now, I'm also going to show you a couple of other anomalous findings. We're going to go through 3 different photographs. That's it. And I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to show you what I found here, and then I'm going to let you make up your own minds. But in my opinion, these are hard-hitting pieces of evidence, and I promise you guys I wouldn't be showing you guys if I didn't think these things were worth a second look, alright? I wouldn't waste your time. So, we'll start out with this first image here. Now, all of these photos I'm going to show you were taken during the Apollo moon missions, where we sent astronauts to walk on the moon. Not only did we walk on the moon, but we also orbited in the lunar spacecraft. So a lot of the photographs were taken up from high above the moon. So we have these beautiful photographs, and this was taken out of the window of the spacecraft as they were flying around the moon. You can see the Earth in the distance, and the Earth is actually going to start disappearing behind the lunar horizon line. And once I show you this saucer that I found, I'll show you the next couple of frames that were snapped right after this one, which also show the same object as they're flying away from it. So, let's go ahead and zoom in to the area of interest. Here we are. We want to put our attention to this crater here that I'm circling. And before we go any further, I just want to ask you guys, can you guys see how washed out this image is? This is a tried and true technique by NASA that they've been doing for years. We've spoken about this before. NASA, in order to keep us from seeing any detail whatsoever and to keep us from identifying these anomalous structures, they have taken all of their lunar images and film footage, and they've basically erased all contrast and increased the brightness. So you get this very washed out, detailless image. You can't see a thing. And this is done for a very specific reason. So as you're looking at this crater, before we actually bring the contrast and the detail back, I want to ask you guys, do you actually see anything within it that would maybe stand out to you? And if the answer is no, well, let's go ahead and zoom in a little further. So how about now? Do you guys see anything sitting in this crater? Well, you may see something, but again, it's still too hard to tell. So let's go ahead and zoom back out a little bit here. And now we'll go ahead and bring back in the contrast, lower the brightness a bit, and show you what this photograph would have originally looked like as the astronauts snapped it while they were flying over the moon. And just look at the difference here. Look at the detail that you can now see. It's like night and day. So now I want you to look in this crater. Look almost dead center of it, and tell me if you see what appears to be a metallic and reflective saucer-shaped object. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. Now the object I'm talking about, you can see it here plain as day, but I'll go ahead and circle it, is right here. Look at this thing. And although it's a perfectly circular saucer-like object, but it has more of a donut shape, because you can actually see a hole towards the center of this thing, or possibly a window, some sort of indentation that is not being hit by the sun. So it almost looks like a donut, which is again something that has been seen many times on Earth. Donut shape is very prevalent with UFO sightings. And look at this thing sitting in this crater, and it relates directly to when the astronauts were caught during the moon missions by ham radio operators who had tapped into their radio feed and heard them speaking with ground control about saucer-shaped craft that they had seen sitting on the rims of craters. Ham radio operators on Earth tapped into their radio signal, heard the astronauts talking about it on a secret channel that was non-public. Moreover, this isn't the first time we've found saucers sitting on the moon. And we've also shown film footage of these damn things flying over the moon, flying up out of craters and flying back down into craters. And if you guys want to see that, or if you're new to the channel, my best advice is to start with our very first video and work your way back up. It'll take you maybe a couple days or a week, but it'll bring you back up to speed. That way you'll know you won't have missed anything, because we have documented and broken a lot of amazing stories on this channel over the past couple of years. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit here, because I do realize the moon has a lot of abstract features and sometimes it can be hard to see things, but when you zoom out, it kind of puts things more into perspective. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit here, and it'll make this saucer much easier for you to see. And as I said earlier, I discovered this. To my knowledge, this has never been shown online before, so this is the first time that this has been identified, and I think it's some smoking gun evidence. Look at the sunlight glinting off of the edge of this thing, and it's just, just kind of sitting there in the crater. Now, could this be a building? That this necessarily isn't a flying saucer. It could be just a donut-shaped building of some kind. We don't know. Now, another thing I found in this image is if you look in a crater right here behind this one, this larger crater, there's also some interesting things. Here, where I'm circling, we have what almost looks to be a tower of some sort. You can actually see this dark tower-like structure, which is casting a shadow down here to the right, and at the top of it, there's almost what looks like a satellite dish that is reflecting sunlight here at the top here. Another thing very prevalent in lunar images we have found are these satellite dish-looking objects. Sometimes we found them by themselves, and sometimes we found them in formations with other satellite dish-looking structures. So yeah, another strange thing in a crater right next to this one. Looks like we've caught one of these saucers sitting in a crater here. So I will put the link to this image down in the video description. You can check it out for yourselves, and you wonder why NASA whitewashes their photographs. Now, what you're seeing here is a sequence of frames which includes this one and the next two frames after it as they were flying over the moon and actually flying away from this crater. So you can just kind of see that this object is really sitting in the crater and is found in all three frames. Here is the second frame. They've moved a little farther away from the object. And here is the third frame where the image starts to get a little bit more blurry as they're going farther and farther from this crater. But again, you can still see this thing, you can still see it reflecting sunlight, along with the shadow that's underneath it. It's sitting there parked in the crater. And you can also see what looks like this tower object in the crater behind it. So, two very anomalous findings here found in three sequential images. So let's go on to the next image. And this is from the Apollo 8 mission. So they're orbiting the moon, they snapped this photograph here. Let's go ahead and flip it right side up to get the correct perspective. And we'll go ahead and zoom on a crater that contains what can only be described as something that looks like a mining operation, and what looks like a large black pipe of some sort that is coming up from the center of the crater, running up along the inside rim, and then moving up and curving out of the crater and then connecting to the surface. So here we are, we're zoomed in on this specific crater. Again, the image is kind of whitewashed. You may be able to see the structure, but let's go ahead and bring the detail back into the image. So here we are, and I want you to look at this long object. Again, what I can best describe as something that looks like a pipe or a tube of some sort, possibly an elevator, who knows? And I want you to also notice what look like other separate structures or buildings sitting in the center of the crater, where this long pipe seems to stop right here dead center. And just look at it, perfect straight line. Look at it moving up and out of the crater rim, running right up the side of it, curving at the top in sort of an L shape and connecting to the surface. Again, another artificial looking object or structure that's plain as day. You don't have to mess with this photograph. I mean, it's there. And you will be hard-pressed to find anything like this in any of the other craters in this photograph. So this is a one-of-a-kind structure, possibly some sort of mining operation. And again, this subject has been spoken about many times before, that the idea of mining the moon. Our own government has spoken about its plans to mine helium-3, and there has been a lot of evidence in which some of these craters on the moon will actually look like they've been mined out by machines. So if this is some sort of mining operation down here in the center of the crater, well, I can understand why they would have this large pipe running up and out of the crater to possibly carry up and out some sort of debris. But again, it's another very interesting photograph. Now, the last photograph I want to show you guys was actually featured. This discovery was featured in a recent Sci-Fi Channel documentary. That's how explosive it was. And it was found by another lunar anomaly researcher who actually has his own book out online that you can download. And it's like 300 pages and contains all of his discoveries on the moon. And so when I actually originally saw that documentary and witnessed what he had discovered, I was completely dumbfounded. So I wanted to go out and try to find the same thing in the same image and make sure that these things were really there. So what did he find on the moon? Well, he was looking at this photograph here from the Apollo 17 mission. Again, they're flying over the moon, and what this researcher discovered can only be described as 3 giant saucer or wheel-shaped objects that were partially sticking up out of the moon dust and stacked beside each other, one by one in front of the other. And they almost look like gears or wheels. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So first, I'm going to show you the photograph that was featured on the Sci-Fi Channel documentary. And that image you're seeing here, this is the zoomed-in shot of the wheel-shaped structures that were found. Now, if you haven't seen them yet, they should be pretty clear to you. They're right here where I'm circling. You'll notice there are what appear to be 3 or 4 of these things. And again, they kind of look like gears, kind of like you would find on your bicycle or in common pieces of machinery. And you'll notice how each of them is partially halfway sticking up out of the moon. The other half seems to be buried. And look how they're stacked, one behind the other, all 3 of them. So now I'm going to show you the illustration that was also featured on this documentary, where the author outlined the wheel-shaped structures along with some other strange things that he found in this image. So you're seeing that photograph here. And again, we have these wheels here where we have an outside wheel, an inner wheel, and they seem to be connected by what look like spokes. So again, they kind of look like those machinery crank wheels, whatever they're called. And they're stacked one next to the other. Now, there are also some other anomalous features here in the background that do look artificial, but we're going to specifically stick with these 3 wheels because those are what we can plainly make out, and those are what are the most amazing about this photograph. So let's go ahead and go back to the original finding. And when I saw this on the documentary, I said, man, that is amazing. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go online and I'm going to try to find the most high-resolution image of this original photograph that I can find. Because I do realize that the author who originally found this, I guess he had gotten his hands on some very high-resolution images, which are actually very hard to come by online these days because NASA has been removing them. And often, you can only usually find medium-resolution images, if that. And NASA has been doing this. They have been removing the high-resolution versions as more and more people are finding these anomalies. But I did some searching and I found a pretty high-resolution version, and I wanted to look for myself to see if these 3 wheels were still in the same location. So that is the photograph that I found online that you're seeing here. And when I zoomed in on the same area that these were found, I was excited to see that the damn things are still sitting there, halfway buried into the soil, but sticking out like a sore thumb. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. Alright, so we're not fully zoomed in yet, but I'll go ahead and circle where these things are. And again, I'll put this image link in the video description. You can download it. And now let's go ahead and zoom in further. And boom, here they are. The same 3 wheels stacked one behind the other. And even with this version, we can still see a lot of detail. We can see the spokes. We can see the inner circles. You can see the details around these things. These look like machine parts, gears of some sort. Now, they could also be buildings. Who knows what they are, but they're massive. And they're so plainly artificial, it almost blows my mind that there's still even a high-resolution version of this image online and that NASA hasn't removed it yet. And it's gotten to the point where if they just ignore us and say nothing, then, how can we really prove anything other than post YouTube videos about it? NASA will just stay silent like they always do. And of course, they have people working for them who will personally attack us online, calling us conspiracy theorists. You guys know all about it, but this stuff is real, and it's just some of the amazing stuff that I wanted to present for you guys tonight. So with that, let me know what you guys think. Check out these images for yourselves. We have this saucer sitting in this crater here. One of the best pieces of evidence I've ever seen, and a new piece of evidence showing one of these objects sitting in a crater. Just mind-blowing stuff. So be sure to share this video and drop me a like if you appreciate the work I do, and I'll see you all here real soon. Stay safe, guys.